Welcome, everybody. This is the Beer Guys Radio Show. We appreciate you coming over here and hanging out with us, having some beers and beer chat, conversation, news, information, all of the good stuff. So, we are going to jump right into the show here. We're not going to waste any time. We're going to get all over it. If you got a question, comment, let us know what you're drinking. Just, chat us up here. We'd appreciate it. So, with that said, y'all, well, let me click this button and do this. And here we go. Welcome, everybody, to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Thank you so much for coming here, hanging out with us, and enjoying a beer, taking a little break from life. We all need it. We're well into January now. It's cold in Georgia. We've had a deep freeze, and when I say cold, I mean like real cold, not like Georgia cold. So it's been like 12 degrees, I think, was the lowest we got. But I am Tim Dennis. Brian Hewitt, are you staying warm?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. The nice thing about where I live, the building I live in, it does a really good job of insulating me, and I've got all southern facing windows. So if it's sunny out, it's pretty warm in here. So
You're
I'm
good to
staying.
go, huh?
I'm toasty
All right, man.
all year long, for the most part. But
For the most part, and in the
yeah.
summer, sometimes more toasty than you'd like to be, right?
Yes, my air conditioning puts in a lot of extra hours
Little
keeping
challenge.
the place livable, because it'll get up to 80, 85 in here if I don't have the air
Good
conditioning
stuff,
on.
man.
So yeah, it's rough, but staying warm is not a problem most of the time. So
Yeah, good deal, good deal. Nate, how the heck are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Feeling better than I was last week.
Good.
Unfortunately, my job gets me outside a lot, so
Yeah,
I've been wearing 4 layers at a time this week. Because this morning when I woke up, it was 21 degrees, I think, and then yesterday it was 16.
that's
So,
fun, man. That's fun. See, I'm not even sure if I still own a jacket. I probably have one in a closet somewhere, but normally with the winters that we get here, because I'm not going to go out running around, not like you, Nate. I don't have to work out in it. I get a set at my desk. So normally if it gets really cold, I got a sweatshirt on now. That is normally good enough for me. But I had an appointment the other morning at 8 a.m. and got out. And on the way back, I had to tank up my car. And just standing out there, I'm like, oh, that's cold. That's biting you there. So, but I made it through. So
thoughts and
that's
prayers.
good. We did it. Thoughts and prayers, guys. We even got more snow. I think we were supposed to get more snow than what we actually got. We flurried where I am. No accumulation or anything, but some of it did fall. So it was a lot of fun.
we got accumulation yesterday.
Did you?
As
Did
we're
you?
recording
Okay.
this, yeah,
Yeah.
it covered. Everything was white, and it was below. It usually isn't when it snows here in the Atlanta areas. For whatever reason, it's always like at 32, and it raises to like 33 or 34.
Yeah.
And it just melts as soon as it hits pavement. It melts, and it's always annoying and anticlimactic. It's kind of fun to look at, but yeah, the past couple of times we've gotten accumulation. This last time it didn't last. It wasn't nearly as much. It didn't last as long. I looked out there earlier today, and it's mostly gone already. So it's fine. Again, where were you back in December when we needed you? But
right.
It's fine.
Crazy stuff. See, and Amanda here said pump set in your car when you pump gas. That's not recommended. They say that's not a good idea, because when you get in and out of the vehicle, there is static discharge. And if you don't hold the vehicle when you get out, you can spark. So Amanda, don't do that. Or make sure to, you know what, if you want to do that, get you one of those grounding straps with the clip on that and wear that in your vehicle to make sure you're properly grounded to be safe. You don't want to blow up. That is, I think, the first rule of gas station is do not explode.
Wasn't there a thing going around where you weren't supposed to use a cell phone either? Is that still a thing?
Yeah,
I don't usually
know if that's
do that
thing or not. There's all kinds of freak stuff, with cell phones, and especially with the 5G deployment. They think it's doing, causing cancer, driving the birds crazy that aren't real, and all that stuff. So, Dave, cheers to you, man. We're thinking about you guys. We talked last week about Dave Adams from California. He said still blazing out there. And I know the fire crews are really fighting it out there. They've been hard at work. And we talked last week about an initiative, Brewers and Brian. I forget I
think it's called We Love LA.
Yeah, but there's
Common Space Brewery.
Yeah. brewers always come together for that kind of stuff. So, always something out there for a good cause. And we had, of course, over here on our side of the country, Asheville got hit by the floods when the hurricane came through. They got destroyed, but it's been a rough year, y'all.
Yeah.
I think that was December, but it's close
Yeah.
enough to the end of the year. We'll bring it over with us. We'll bring it forward. So,
Yes. Fast forwarded into this one. Yeah,
anyhow,
it's been a rough 6 months. Let's say that,
it
or
has
3
been a
months
rough
maybe.
6 months. Yeah.
Actually,
This
the
month has
flooding
been a
happened in
terrible year.
September.
Was that
September?
September?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. That's still within Brian's 6 months. So we'll
We'll go
allow
with
it.
6 months. It's been a rough 6 months.
We'll allow it. Crazy. Well, guys, let's talk about our beers of the week here. Brian, what are you getting into, sir?
So I pre-gamed with a Three Taverns, and the name of the beer is You Like That? And I'm not sure exactly how to read that, but it has a question mark and an apostrophe on there. So it might be snarky, it might be something, I'm not sure, but that is a cold IPA or an IPL, as we like to call it. So a hopped pale lager.
Okay.
It's a good beer. I liked it. So the answer to the question is I do like that. I am drinking now the Creature Comforts Jungle Bird, which is a cocktail inspired ale. It's categorized as other in Untapped. I think from the taste of it, it tastes like it's probably their Berliner base with some fun stuff in there. But that's a collaboration with Tip Top, who makes the little pre-made cocktails in a can.
Is the cocktail a Jungle Bird? Is that a cocktail?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, it's a Jungle Bird, and I guess the cocktail originates in Malaysia.
Okay.
Which is part of the reason I was excited about drinking it. So I'm getting into that now. It's kind of fruity.
Cool.
Apparently it's a classic cocktail. I don't really know a lot about it other than this beer. So, and later on in the show, perhaps, or, when we're talking to our Patreon supporters, I'll be drinking a Bissell Brothers Reciprocal, which is a New England IPA with all Australian grown hops, Vic Secret, Ella, and Summer, to name a few, or maybe all of them. What about you, Tim? What are you drinking?
I'm going to go last because I'm going to be long-winded with mine because I have some additional information to share.
Oh.
Mo, Mike, Nate, what are you sipping on?
So, despite my hiccup of the last snowstorm, I'm still doing dry January.
Okay.
And so from Estrella Galicia, we've got their 0.0 lager. I've enjoyed the imported non-alcoholic stuff. This one is fine. I think I like the Stella, the Heineken, the Guinness, even though the Guinness is a stout. I think I like their 0.0s a little bit more than I like this one. But it's widely available and it's still a non-alcoholic beer.
It's there and it's doing the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good stuff. Well, guys, what I have this week is from Pub Beer, which is a 10 barrel. I have the morning after beer Mosa. And so the folks with Pub Beer reached out. They just sent us some. Brian, I got some for you. Nate, if we see you around soon, I have some to share. But they have started a wet January initiative. And Nate, it's because of people like you that they had to do this. So, as we talked about before, tough month for breweries, for businesses in general. A lot of people it's cold. They spend a lot at Christmas. And then you throw dry January in there. It's just tough for breweries, brew pubs, beer bars, restaurants, and all of that. So in an effort to encourage people to drink in January, they started the Wet January movement. And again, this is a Pub Beer is kind of the beer of this. And then, of course, this morning after beer Mosa. They've got a spokesperson. Leonardo DiCipio is their spokesperson here. So they want
I love his movies.
Beer. Yes, very good. Very good stuff. They've got an Instagram account where they're sharing cheesy videos. They're running contests and stuff. That Instagram account is Cheap Fun Beer, all one word there. And like they ran earlier this week, they ran a contest, a 1 minute sale that they started at $4.20, ran for 1 minute, and you could get 18 of their pub beers for $1. And so it's like, you got to be quick. You got 1 minute to get into it. But on to what I'm drinking, morning after beer. It is a beer Mosa, an emergency beer Mosa, guys. So if you ever have an emergency, they said if you have a hiccup like Nate did, if you go out and have a PBR, maybe you have too many PBRs the next morning, the beer Mosa, very carefully worded here, could potentially reduce the chance of a headache after a tough night. So, and we talked about that recently about your morning after cures and that, but the morning after beer is throwing it out there that it could help you out there. And they said that this is some beer and some Mosa in this, and it clocks in at 7%. So, even though it's a little beer and a little Mosa, the beer portion isn't playing around there. So got that for you. I'm sipping it right now, and you know what? It's a beer mosa. It's
Okay.
a light ale with orange there. So enjoyable, especially this would be great with brunch or breakfast. Have your little eggs Benedict, break out your beer mosa, you're good to go, man. So wet January, everybody drink up. And if you want to see Leonardo DiCipio do cheesy stuff and run some contests, and follow him there on Instagram at Cheap Fun Beer. So should be cool.
You said samosa, and they got me thinking about samosas or
Samosas?
Samoas.
No,
Which
the cookies or the Indian
the cookies,
stuffed pastries?
because that
Okay.
came up recently. That I guess is that did the Girl Scouts
Did they
start
do that recently?
doing that?
I don't know.
Like
Yeah.
I don't know when they start doing it, but for whatever reason at work we were looking at Girl Scout cookies, and I'm like, oh, I'm down for some of those. So
Yeah.
throw those in
But
too.
now you have me thinking about samosas.
Oh, samosas.
So
are good
I
too, yeah.
want some beer, some mosas, some samosas, and Samoas, because all of that sounds
Yes.
like a pretty decent meal, to be quite honest with you.
That's quite a charcuterie board right there.
It is. It is
Yeah.
well balanced, I think is
Yes,
what they call
exactly.
that. Yeah, sure enough. Well, guys, moving right along. Brian, you talked here previously about the tariffs that were coming up. There's a little bit of update that we got out from Brewbound, the Brewbound newsletter. What is going on?
Yeah, so Trump had previously stated that the tariffs that we've been talking about, cans and everything else, would be part of his day one round of executive orders, and we now know that is not the case. He told reporters following his swearing-in ceremony that the 25% tariffs on goods from Mexico and Canada could be coming as soon as February 1st, which makes me think that there's a chance that it'll be later than that. And I don't know if he didn't do it right off, is there a chance that it won't happen at all? And maybe this is kind of a bargaining chip threat to get something out of these nations. I don't know. So I don't really know yet, but we've got a reprieve. So if you want some beer from Canada and you want some beer from Mexico, go buy it now before before the rates go up on it, the prices go up. And they may have already done it in anticipation of this happening, but
I feel like we need to keep some friends here. I don't want to
wouldn't be a
get
bad
too
idea.
political, but yeah, let's keep some allies here that that we're all good with. We don't want to get at everybody there, but hey, I guess we'll see what the heck goes on, man. It'll be a wild ride, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like if he didn't do it, because he did a lot of stuff right away that
It
I
is.
think that
Yeah.
maybe people didn't realize he would do, and he didn't do this. So if he didn't do this, there's got to be a reason for that. Is that because it might not happen, or is it just I feel hopeful about it. It didn't happen immediately, so there's a chance that it won't happen. And I think that will help us out here with beer, keeping the costs down. And
yeah.
yeah.
We've talked about it, Brian. I visit Reddit a good bit. I get a lot of the hobby groups that I'm in and that are on Reddit. We have an Atlanta beer forum on there that I go into, do some fun stuff. They're currently, speaking of that, on the Reddit ATL beer. We've been doing a series here. I say I believe I need to see. I think it's A Studer is the user that's doing this, but he's going back through the history books of defunct Georgia breweries, like from way back in the 1800s and that. And so just educating us on the history of Georgia beer. We just finished recently a series on the current open breweries there. So went through all of those with a little profile. And now we're going back through all of the historical ones. And like today, there was one called Big Woody Brewing that apparently was supposed to have been in Norcross sometime between like 2002 and 2006. But I asked Ron Smith about it. Ron co-authored the Atlanta Beer Book. I asked John Roberts, who is one of the patriarchs of Georgia beer, owns Max Lagers and Bold Monk. And I asked the Atlanta Area Beer Elders Group who had heard of it, and literally no one had. So the thinking is one of two things. They could have either changed their name before they officially opened, or it was a little aspirational home brewer that did printed up some coasters and did some things like that. So
could be,
yeah. But anyhow, a fun little trip. Sorry, got a little sidetracked there. And but to the point of Reddit, they're very left leaning in their news. So
just a bit, yes.
No matter what happens, if you see it on Reddit, you're going to get the left side of it there. And I find it difficult to if that's what you're getting fed, then that's what you see. and kind of get that. So I work really hard to go out and source news from other areas to see what the reality and the truth of it is. And guys, we've talked off air about politics and our different, I think we all have slightly different philosophies. We're definitely not a hive mind here as far as that goes. But this is just saying, y'all, there's a lot of stuff going on, and just make sure that wherever you get your news from, that you're getting it from a reliable and non-biased source. Or if you see something that sounds absolutely insane, look it up elsewhere. See what the other guy has to say about it, because
it can always do the
crazy.
thing where you balance your biases. Just go get it from the right and then go get it from the left and see what
it
makes
is.
sense between the two of them.
Yeah.
Well, if you can tolerate that, I don't think everybody can. I think people would be
can't.
outraged by one side or the other. But
that's simply it. There a lot of people have chosen their side, and they're totally okay with being just fed whatever their side says, and they're going to believe that.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to feel. But I know there's websites out there that they go out and find different articles on subjects, and they'll tell you this source typically leans left, this source leads right, and they're supposed to give you the unbiased point of it. I can't think of any of them right now. But anyhow, moving along from that, Brian, there are, as you say, significant new proposals from the TTB. What the heck is going on there?
Yeah. We just heard from the Surgeon General a week or so ago about his thoughts on what should happen, and you're going to hear some similar things here. Yeah, the last Friday, the TTB proposed new regulations that would significantly change alcohol beverage labeling. These regulations include requiring nutritional disclosures on, wow, I can't even say disclosures today, for most beer, and alcohol content information on all beer labels. It would need to include the serving size. So we need to think of beer in terms of servings now.
All right.
The
Serving of beer.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't have the entire breakdown, but it's over a certain size. I think my stovepipes might have an issue there. Over a certain size, you may have to break up the packaging. It may not be allowed because you can't have X number of servings per package. You have to. There's some really specific stuff in there, but yeah, that's getting way into the weeds. But you also need to have the number of servings per container. The alcohol content and the current ABV shown on packaging is not sufficient for this requirement for some reason. I don't know why.
All right.
The pure alcohol per serving, I think that's different than alcohol content, and I'm still confused by all this. The calories per serving, carbohydrates, fat, and protein per serving. So you need that. This information has to be displayed in a way that follows specific guidelines, either in a format similar to the FDA labels we've all seen, the nutrition facts thing, or in a linear display within a text box with bolded information. I'm thinking a lot of people are going to go with that text box, depending on how big that is. But again, ABV is not really recognized for these requirements. Only alcohol percentage by volume, which is a different measurement. And
did you mean by weight?
It might be by weight. There's a different
ABV is kind of the standard, but I think Utah uses ABW for some reason.
It's something. And it may have been a typo on my part or a typo on the article's part, but there is a different measurement that they're looking for that is not our ABV that we know, and only that will be acceptable. And it's not clear as to why that is. There are some exemptions for the nutrition part of the requirements. Beer that doesn't cross state lines won't have to have the nutrition information, and wine and seltzer under 7% ABV will not have to include it either. And I think that's across the board for them. I'm not sure why they get a pass on that. They must have better lobbyists and pay better bribes. That's all I can figure. But the alcohol content labeling would extend to kegs and non-interstate commercial beers. So no matter where your beer goes, it's going to have this alcohol information. It is also proposed that labeling will include mandatory disclosure of 9 major allergens for malt beverages, wines, and distilled spirits. So this is across the board. The allergen list must include milk, eggs, fish, shellfish, tree nuts, wheat, peanuts, soybeans, and sesame. And I think a lot of those won't really apply to us, but yeah, milk maybe for the lactose stouts, depending. I don't know. Despite efforts on the part of the Brewers Association, there will be no special rules or higher tolerances to any of their ratings and scales and whatnot for small producers or low batch products. If there's any good news here, it's that the brewers would be given a 5-year phase-in period for the new regulations, and the label changes required could be made without needing a new certificate of label approval. assuming there isn't drastic changes to the label. So assuming they're just slapping it on an existing label, I think they're in the clear on that. Apparently, the Brewers Association proposed the use of QR codes to meet the labeling requirements, but the TTB rejected that. That would be one of the few times I would be pro QR code, because that's small, unintrusive, and if you really want the information, it's there. The beer industry has 90 days to comment on the proposed new regulations before they go into effect. And I think there's going to be some comments on this, because
There might
there's
be
a
a few
lot here.
comments. Might be a
Yeah,
few comments. You know, I did some calculations one time, like looking at a stout like Black Tuesday, which is around a 19 percenter. If I remember right, like this information will destroy the pastry stout market,
it will.
because I mean, I think some of these are 3, 4, 500 calories in an 8-ounce serving. You know,
Probably.
you're talking pretty much pure sugar and alcohol there in a lot of these. So, but this is also, we've talked about this before with labeling, a big thing with all of this. And I don't know the details of this, Brian, but when they were talking about this kind of labeling before, it was going to require brewers to like get lab testing done on things in order to put these labels on there. That's a big expense, you know, and especially for a small brewery. So I think that, you know, what we're going to see here is limited releases of beers, limited distribution. You know, there's beers that'll be like, well, I'm just not going to send it across state lines then. So it's going to tighten things up there, and probably fewer releases. Again, depending on how they implement this requirement. You know, if they've got to send it out and do a bunch of testing to see that, because like when we homebrewed, Brian, we use a software called Beersmith, and it
Yeah.
would tell you, it would give you estimates on this kind of stuff. But I'm assuming that the TTB is going to want more than just a calculated estimate of what it's going
You,
to be.
there is I think there's a range, and I don't remember, for each different thing there's a certain percentage range it can be off, and it's tighter in some cases and wider in other ones. I don't know if Beersmith would have been accurate enough for this or not. We might have been able to get away with certain things and not with others, but I don't know. If this is mandated and it becomes a thing that has to happen, I just assume that yeah, there'll be fewer beers released, and of certain styles like pastry stouts, it's going to be a lot of pressure to not do those, just because, you know, you're having to disclose what it really is, and
Diabetes.
yeah, yes, right, it's beatus. But I also think that there's a possibility that maybe like state brewers associations could get together and come up with a way to, like, you know, pull in and get some sort of a budget situation where they could get their stuff evaluated and get official lab work done. Maybe, I don't know. I'm hoping that there's a way of deferring the costs a bit by getting everybody together. Like, we all got to do it. Let's all,
Yeah.
you know, pool our resources and get this done cheaply, and see if we can come up with a way of ongoing basis of making this affordable, because otherwise it's just another financial burden on an industry that's taken some hits. And
Right.
man, this is bad timing for this. It really is. And
Indeed.
are people really asking for nutritional facts on beer? Because, like, it's not a
I'm sure there
diet.
are. I'm sure there's groups
Yeah.
out there.
All
I
right.
mean, it's tough, you know. I know like soda has to have it on there in that. I mean, it is a consumable. I kind of get it, you know, because it is something we consume, but I just don't want our poor little brewers to have to go through, or even our poor big brewers, to be honest with you, going through that.
The one thing I think I do, it's hard to argue against, is the one about the allergens. I'm like, you know what, man, if you got peanuts in your
Yeah.
beer, you really need to put that on there. If you got
Mhm.
milk, you got lactose in there, man, you really got to disclose that somewhere.
Sure.
I don't care how you do it. You just got to let people know. So when they're getting into it, you know, as a guy that's doesn't do well with the lactose, I'm like, I want to
Yeah.
know. Like, I'm probably still going to drink the beer. I just want to be ready for it. You know, I
Right.
want to be
Let
ready
me
for
know
the
if I need to
fallout.
pop one of my pills before
Exactly.
I do this. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, the Colorado Rockies may be able to play baseball and be very good at it, professional level, but it sounds like they cannot pour a beer.
Yeah, this is the scandal of the week. The internet is outraged with the Colorado Rockies for posting a video of the arguably the worst beer pour in the history of social media. It's not quite the Milko pour, which is like all foam, but it's really close to one. It features a Coors Light basically being dribbled into the center of a upright pint glass, no tilting, no nothing, and it's just results in a ridiculous amount of head that takes up 2/3 of the glass. It looks terrible. It's not far enough down to be a Milko. It's not a generous head. It's just a ridiculous amount. The video is presented without comment, so it's not clear if it was meant to be funny or ironic in some way, or if the person running the account just didn't know how to pour a beer. But the Rockies play at Coors Field, so presumably it wasn't meant as a jab at Coors. So it's really hard to know what was even going on in that person's head. They had to know that didn't look like a real beer, not like a real good pour. But,
well, that was my thinking. Unless was it a live video? Did they mess it up live? Because if you recorded that and then chose to post it, that's just
well,
wrong.
It was a one-handed deal where there was no hand on the glass. It was on a table, and it was the smallest trickle from the top. If you were trying to release the most CO2 possible from a beer, that is how you do it. And I have tried to do that for the purposes of doing what do they call it? Like a slow pour, a faux pour. I've done that to create that big pillowy head but that was for a different thing. It was absolutely the worst possible way to do it. Like nobody's ever poured a beer like that before. And it was done with impunity. I just got to say, there was only a hand in there, but it was done with impunity.
Was it Hillary Clinton that got grief for like the way she poured a beer? I think she did a draft beer and she was pulling it slow. So it was foaming up and all that. But here we're talking about Hillary Clinton again. The Rockies play at Coors Field. Colorado's kind of a beer town. You should be a little better connected than that.
But some of the responses to that video were pretty awesome. Like you have to expect it. I think one of my favorites was, wait, so the first pour was worse. So the thing about the whole pour situation is there was lacing in the glass. It had been done before.
Okay.
So there apparently was a first pour of Coors that was even worse than the one they actually posted.
Gotcha.
So that's amazing. So it's scandal of the week, Tim. Scandal of the
terrible.
week.
How embarrassing for them, Brian. Just
exactly
total embarrassment.
There's still time to delete it.
There's still time. It's too late now. It's out. It's went viral. There is no hope for you, Rockies. The damage has been done. But Brian, tying that in, talking about Coors. So, Coors is just taking it on the chin here lately, aren't they? Because you got this with the Rockies messing up the beer pour, but then Coors also had a faux pas on an ad that they ran, and so it brought them out with a case of the Mondays.
I didn't think about the two, but maybe this is the same person that's responsible for both. But this week, Molson Coors announced that Coors Light will be repackaged as Monday's Lights for a limited time. This comes after a spelling error appeared on a national advertising campaign, which debuted on Monday. The ad was supposed to read Mountain Cold Refreshment. Instead, it read Mountain Cold Refreshment.
No regrets.
Yeah, no raggarts. Coors Light acknowledged the mistake in a statement that began with the following sentence. We had a case of the Mondays. Apparently, they're turning the blunder into a whole new advertising campaign that will be tied into an upcoming Super Bowl commercial. The new Mondays Light 12 packs will be available soon for purchases at retailers nationwide. And Coors is also offering people a chance to win a case of Mondays Light after the Super Bowl commercial airs. So there'll be a way for you to win it if you can't find it. And you know what the crazy thing is? I think people are probably going to go out looking for this. It'll probably just disappear from shelves.
It worked out for them. That's a true marketing person there. They're like, nope, we can work with this. We can work with this.
You messed up something. Let's make it funny.
Let's market it. Let's do it. Absolutely. Sure enough. Well, Brian, before we move right along here, how about we give a shout out to our awesome sponsor?
Yes. I usually focus on the options available at Truck and Tap every week because it's just obvious. They have 20 taps to choose from. You can taste the rainbow and there's always something new to try. But another cool thing about Truck and Tap is they also get beers you just don't see around very often, especially not on tap. My beer picks for the week usually include these gems, and this week is no exception. Here are my picks. At Truck and Tap Woodstock, I'm going with Yazoo's Hoppy Fields. It's a blend of oak-aged golden ales fermented with multiple yeast strains and dry hopped. When was the last time you had a dry hopped American wild ale? It's been a minute, right?
It has.
it's been a few months for me, and I loved them. I thought they were fantastic, and now I'm forgetting the name of the brewery out of Nashville that does them, but yeah, they're great. And
Barrique?
Barrique, yes, it was
Barrique?
Barrique.
Yeah.
And I brought some of those back and enjoyed them. I haven't seen anything like that on tap anywhere in a while. It is Schwartz beer season, FYI. So at the Duluth location, I'm getting Sprecker's Black Bavarian. You can expect roasty notes of coffee and caramel from this dark lager. Schwartz beer is always a good choice, especially now. At Truck and Tap Alpharetta, my pick is Allagash's Cool Ship Resurgam, which is a blend of 1, 2, and 3-year-old spontaneously fermented wild ales, commonly referred to as a goose, or depending on who you talk to, a method traditionnel. It's hard to beat Allagash at the wild ale game, so this is a no-brainer. Again, how often are you going to see this on tap? Like, nowhere. Truck and Tap is the only place you're going to see this.
Madness.
And what's that?
I said madness, Brian.
Madness,
it's
right?
madness.
Yes. And finally, at the Lawrenceville location, I'm going with Upland's Champagne Velvets, which is a quote-unquote rescued pre-prohibition lager that was recreated from a handwritten recipe that was discovered by a fan of the beer. And I think that fan went on to open a brewery and then resell the recipe. But it's a long story. But it's a beer it's worth getting. So I'm going to get that one. Of course, there are other gems on the tap list. So you can see for yourself at truckandtap.com. While you're there, check out the food truck schedule. You're going to want a little bite of something to eat while you visit. That's truckandtap.com for the latest on everything happening at your local Truck and Tap. And thank you to Truck and Tap for your continued warm support. They still have heaters, people. You can still go to Truck and Tap.
They got heaters. Bring in the heat, man. Bring in the heat. Yeah. Thanks, Truck and Tap. We appreciate you very, very much. So, Brian, beer drama. Yes. We heard not long ago Molson Coors was planning to shut down the original Leinenkugel brewery, 157-year-old brewery that they were closing down. Well, when that news got out, the original owners, Leinenkugels, wanted to buy it back, and they're trying, but I heard that they've been facing some opposition to that.
Yeah, the brewery was supposed to have closed on the 17th. It's the Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin brewery, for people who aren't familiar with it. It's not clear. I looked online to see if there was any kind of indication on Google Maps if it had been closed. It's not showing as closed yet, so I don't know if it actually has been closed. And we are past that date at this point in time. Yeah, but Jake and Dick Leinenkugel submitted a proposition to Molson Coors requesting to enter into a non-disclosure agreement to discuss acquiring the brewery to keep it open. So Molson Coors, their CEO, declined that request initially, but the Leinenkugels are not letting the matter drop. They have sent in a subsequent request, and they, as part of their effort, they released an official statement to social media stating that they're optimistic that they can come to an agreement with Molson Coors to save the brewery. And I think they're hoping for some online support for the historic brewery, and it may sway things in their favor. And the fact that I'm not 100% sure the brewery has closed means that maybe Molson Coors is playing hardball, but they're potentially interested in working something out so the brewery stays open. It's a 157-year-old brewery, people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's history. Come on.
I don't understand why they would be like, nah, we don't want to talk about it. I mean, you got to start. The only thing I can think is it a tax benefit? Do they close it down, take a loss, and write that off? Do they feel that would be more lucrative to them than selling it? I can't really see any other reason for them not. If they're like, hey, we want to get rid of this, the guys are like, all right, we'll buy it back. And like, nah, we're just going to close it. We're just going to shut it down.
We're just going to burn it to the ground and take no dollars.
Yeah.
My other thought is maybe they're selling either the brewery or the property to some other. They've got a deal that's lucrative to sell it to somebody else.
Shut it down, sell it off.
Yeah, and it may not even be the brewery. It may just be the property itself. I don't know what that property is worth in that area, but maybe. I mean, or maybe the building, somebody wants to put something else in there, a museum or a shopping mall, or
who knows,
condos. I'm not sure. Maybe,
all right.
Maybe it has a lot of value to it. So I don't know.
We'll have to keep an eye on this one. We'll have to see what in the world develops here, because that'll be interesting. That will be interesting. Sure enough.
Yes.
All right, Brian. So the answer, the fountain of youth, Brian, does it exist? Is it out there? You know, and I want to say a happy birthday to my father who turned 85 this week.
Oh,
So
happy
that's what,
birthday, Tim's father.
yeah,
Happy
that's a
birthday,
lot of
Tim's
years
father.
to be around, you know, 1940, 85 years around here. But
Wow.
a
Yeah.
lot of times you see these news stories, and of course they tell you don't take that advice, don't look at that. But I'm 87 years old, and they're like, "What's your cigarette? What's your secret?" And they're like, "Well, I smoke a pack of Virginia Slims and drink 2 Millers every day," and you know, things like that. But in this, Brian, we've got someone who is older than 70, and he says on a weekend he's nailing 18 to 20 Guinnesses, and that's his secret, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Apparently, a 70 plus year old man from Ireland, of course. He's 18 to 20 Guinnesses every weekend. His name is Mick O'Brien, and that's a real name. It
All
does
right.
sound like I made
Yes,
that up, but it
yes.
really
All
is a real
right.
name. That is not my alter ego. That is a real
Yeah.
person. That's not me. He drinks that every weekend. He was featured on a TV show called The Clinic for Well People in the UK, I believe. As part of the show, they gave him a medical exam and found that he was in excellent health. His metabolic age was 68, and he's 70 plus, so that's younger than his actual age. He had excellent blood pressure and a healthy heart. They also noted his thyroid was perfect, and his liver was still looking good somehow. The doctor even commented that if he minds himself, and I don't know what that could possibly mean, he could live to be 102. So O'Brien apparently has good genetics for longevity, with many of his family members living into their 90s or even hundreds. He also mentioned that he stays fit by walking 25 miles a week and enjoys his drinking only on the weekends. Of course, this isn't medical advice, and we definitely don't recommend you trying any of this at home. But if you are planning on knocking back a couple dozen pints of Guinness this next weekend, I'd recommend you get started walking right now, because you need to make 25 miles to keep the Reaper away from the door, I guess. I think.
That's that's something, Brian, that they look at a lot of. I forget what they're called, blue zones, green zones, something like that. But
Blue
I think it's
zones.
blue
Yeah.
zones,
Yeah.
like certain pockets around the world where the residents there are healthy and live a long, long, long time. And I think one of the common trends with a lot of them was they're active.
Yeah.
That there was some place in Italy where apparently the whole town was really steep hills. So anywhere you went, you're climbing hills. And then they looked at, like, I think it's Okinawa. A lot of people there are still walking. They're working in their garden. They're doing things like that. They talked about their diet, but if you're doing 25 miles a week at 70, maybe just keeping the body pumping like that is helping you. And dude talking about, I only do my drinking on the weekend. I was like, well, dude, you are drinking 20.
That's
So,
right.
I mean, we better not add Monday through Friday in there.
Well, that
So
gives him
just doesn't
5 days
sound
to
safe.
recover. So the first 2 days are just pure
Yeah.
hangover, I assume, at that age. Maybe
Yeah.
3. First
It's
3 days are
crazy.
hangover. He's just
Right.
angry
He
and in
needs
pain
he
and
needs some
walking.
of my morning after beer, man.
I think
He needs
so.
that. And see, maybe he's drinking that. Maybe he gets up Monday morning and has him a little pint of OJ and a Guinness. Is that a blend, Brian? I don't know if I've seen that one in the mini Guinness blends there. A
There
Guinness
is a
and an
Guinness and
OJ.
tomato juice, but I don't know
There
about an
is.
OJ
Yeah.
one. And I've
Okay.
seen there's a thing. There's a brunch place around here somewhere that does or did I think it was called a depth charge or something like that, but it was a
Okay.
Guinness with a shot of espresso in it. So you
Okay.
drank a Guinness
All
with
right. Yeah.
espresso in it, and I had it. Actually, I had a we made chili in the house recently, and Guinness was put in it, and it was early enough in the day. I had some fresh coffee. I mixed the two together and I drank it. It was like, yeah, that's fine.
The best part of
Okay.
waking up, man.
Just
Nate, can you
Guinness
hit
in
the
your cup.
Google and see if half Guinness and half orange juice is a thing? Can you
Absolutely.
find
I'm
our
also
influence there?
curious how successful Mick is at splitting the G.
Oh, I'm sure he's an
Yeah,
expert.
he can do it. He does it like faster than anybody with his eyes closed.
20
He's
out of
just
20
nailing
times.
it.
Well, I imagine his
Yeah,
first one he's bad at, because I imagine he just opens up the throat and dumps that whole thing
just
back.
dumps it.
And
Yeah,
then he works
like
on
pouring a
splitting the
bucket
G
out
from
in the
there on out.
yard. It's like, there we go. All right, I have the tank. I have the engine primed now. We're ready to go.
He's living the
So
life, though. What's
I
that?
found a recipe. I found a recipe for all these pop-ups. For Guinness Black Velvet, where it's Guinness, champagne, a little bit of orange juice, and then orange bitters. But just Guinness and orange juice, I'm not seeing. Besides a TikTok video, I'm not seeing
Okay. All right.
um,
Fair enough.
a lot of
And TikTok's back. That's
popularity.
news this week too.
Oh,
TikTok was
that's right.
banned and then it came back.
Did they weren't banned. I think they just pulled the plug.
Well, correct. They said due to the ban, we're not available there.
I
And
think they
then,
were playing a little bit of hardball, right? Because weren't they?
it was
Yeah,
oddly political. I mean, they
yeah.
made it oddly political. They're like, "Hey, we're gone. Sorry, you can't use this, but we're hopeful that with the assistance of President Trump coming in, we'll be able to." And then, like a day later, they're like, "Thanks to the efforts of President Trump." I'm like, "All right, man." And now
I
TikTok
didn't
and Trump is.
expect those two to be a thing, but I
Well,
don't know. I'm
yeah,
confused by
I don't
everything
know,
these
man.
days. I don't
I don't
know.
know.
Yeah,
Nothing makes sense. Left is right, up is down. What
it
in the
really
heck is going
is
on?
just wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Brian, as we are in January, if you weren't aware, we talk. January is just a crazy month, man. We talk about dry January. Now we've got wet January. Leonardo DiCipio wants you to drink a beer mosa and maybe buy an 18-pack for $1 and all that. But breweries take advantage of the slow time, and it seems like there's a trend in renovations in January, getting a fresh coat of paint on our breweries.
Yeah, that's right. You may be participating in dry January, and a lot of people are, but Brewbound is reporting that more and more breweries are participating in a thing. I think it's becoming a brewery trend. It's called renovation January for breweries. January usually sees a decline in traffic at many craft breweries. I think we all know this due to, like you've mentioned earlier in the show, cold weather, post-holiday spending hangovers, probably real hangovers that are bad. I don't know. And, people doing dry January. In many cases, the customers that breweries get just they don't pay the bills. There's just not enough people coming in. They're not drinking enough to really pay the bills, or just maybe breaking even. And non-alcoholic beer offerings aren't always making up the difference between their sales in this month either. Even for the places that do have them, and some places still don't have non-alcoholic beers. So that's a mistake. They need to get on that as soon as possible. But the Brewers Association reports that January is typically the lowest sales month of the year, with craft beer sales dropping 20 to 40% compared to peak months. So it's considerably down. So it's an ideal time for a brewery to shut down for a while and tackle those projects they've been putting off. And in the article I read, for example, to mitigate their losses, or Notch Brewing in Salem, Massachusetts, closed its main tap room for 2 weeks in January to demolish a wall and expand their tap room. It's something they've been meaning to do. The local ordinances changed so they could do it. And so people are going to benefit as a result of their shutting down. Not only will they save some money, everybody that comes in after the fact will have a more spacious tap room to hang out in. Other breweries are shutting down to do things like deep cleanings, and there are breweries that I've been to that definitely need to do some deep cleaning.
Needed that, yeah.
Yeah. They repair their floors. That's another big thing. And in some cases, just give the staff a break, which is always nice. So if you see your local brewery, closing, or if they've been closed for a little while this month, I don't think it may not be a cause to be, concerned. It might actually be a good thing. They may be fixing stuff up, and when they reopen, it may be better than ever. So it's a silver lining to a slow sales month, is what I'm saying.
All right. Do what you got to do, man. Take advantage of it, right? I mean, we've seen,
Absolutely.
we'd rather you put on a new coat of paint and stay open than close. We heard, this is an unconfirmed rumor, Brian, but it seems to be Red Hair Brewing, which was one of the older breweries in Georgia. They've been around a while, and they had a location in Marietta. Then they opened, or they had a big production location in Marietta, Georgia. And then they opened on the Marietta Square, a smaller place with a still and a restaurant then. But apparently they unceremoniously just shut her down. And so, without really saying anything, no last hurrah or anything. But I will say that I talked to some of my industry friends, and they said, pardon me, they did say sometimes you run into issues with alcohol permits.
Oh,
And that, it could be temporarily closed while they get that in straight. But apparently, there was another brewery that faced that issue where they're like, hey, we got to close, get permits in line. And then they just never came back, from that. So, but it seems like if that was the issue, you let folks know you're not gone. You post something out there and say, hey, we're going to be back. So just too much of that going on. So yeah, do what you got to do, breweries. Put a fresh face on and keep them doors open. Go out there and make it wet, which sounds a lot creepier than I intended it to as
We
it
could have
came
done that
out.
better.
I think
Yeah.
this is a really good idea because I think that there are a lot of breweries out there that have ideas of things they'd like to do, but getting it done is impossible
Yeah.
while you're open. And
Mhm.
I actually part of the reason we have brewers that listen to this, I'm spreading the idea around like, hey, is it slow in January? Take some time off, man. Go fix some things up. Keep the lights off for a little bit, save a little money, but also fix some things
Yeah,
up and make
that's
it better for the rest of the time. I don't know if how.
remember that. You know what? I'll tell you this a story. I was at a brewery recently during the blizzard, and the brewer, commented that with the weather, they lost like a day or two. And with as tight as the margins are and tough as it is right now, a day or two of revenue could be all it takes
Oh,
to,
true. Yeah.
so you're like, take some time off, turn the lights off for a while. That's not always an option, need to get
Mhm.
that revenue coming in. So they're trying to figure out how to do that. Now, of course, there are some breweries, of course, that can, but not all of them can afford to do that, man. They need that revenue cranking in every day.
That is a fair point. Some of some of the breweries they were talking about have salaried employees they were still like they were on the payroll, but they were
Sure.
doing diminished things. They were kind of just giving them a break. I'm like, man, that you must be doing great as
Yeah.
a brewery if you can afford to pay people when you're not selling things. But
Yep.
there are
Yeah.
breweries out there like that, and I understand a lot of people, out there. If margins are, times are tight, you need to make all the sales you can. I get it. I get it. You can't just like
Sure.
take a break, in the middle of a, even a cold month like this. So you need the money coming in. So I get that
Yeah.
too. But if you can, this is not a bad opportunity right now.
Yeah, and
Just
if you need to do stuff anyhow, this is the time to do it. You're like, "Look,
oh
we're
yeah.
gonna have to do this. Let's take advantage of the slowdown and get her done."
Yeah, that is a good point. Reduced traffic means, well, you're
Yeah.
not going to have a full tap room, which means you could mark
Mhm.
off some of the area. Hey, we're renovating this spot over here, a little extra paint
Stay
or a
out of
little,
here, y'all.
yeah,
We'll serve you beer over here.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? On that note, talking about like the new year ahead and what's gonna be happening, do either of you guys have any predictions on trends in the new year or anything that you think we may see out of it? And I'll tell you this, I read an article from it's called 750.com, and they were talking about industry trends this year. And some of them I think, we've already seen some of this coming, but there's where brewers are going to swap extremes for approachability. I think we're
Okay.
already seeing that. They're talking about how, there used to be gimmicky, forced creativity and such, and that sold beers. We've seen that, but people aren't, they're not buying into that as much as they used to. So they said that making the beer approachable is going to be something. They mentioned that like where your ingredients are from, the ingredient provenance and the
Mhm.
environment become selling points. Again, I think that environmental. There's several breweries that have kind of leaned into that already. Talking
Yeah.
about whether it's solar power, CO2 recapture. Given like Maine Beer Company, I remember there's things called 1% for the planet.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah.
that? But hey, 1% goes back to supporting things. Another one, and this one's interesting. I could see this, but they said the trusted flagship beer is going to become paramount again. So Nate,
Really?
what do you
Okay.
think? Are we going to see the return of the importance of the flagship?
It's tough to say because you're seeing so many breweries where they are doing, like, mix packs. Like, we saw that a lot this last year where breweries were doing, family packs of certain flagship beers where they're taking a flagship and then they were basically doing cousins of it, like, with Sweetwater with their 420, and they did the mango 420 and, a hazy 420
Right.
and whatnot, and so I would like to see us go back to, core flagships, but I think there's just too much innovation out there that, for us to really be able to put that genie fully back in the bottle. I still see a lot of push for classic styles still. I think the crazy, crazy adjunct heavy IPAs and FMBs are, um, kinda past. I think I would like to see more, colored ales, like the red ale, the white ale, the brown ale. But in terms of actually what's selling, I think you're still going to see a lot of IPAs.
IPA's
Um,
the king
I
still,
think
yeah.
I think IPA and local is still going to be king because we're seeing the national brands pulling out of national distribution and closing down tap rooms. You're seeing Tilray doing it, consolidating their brands and cutting SKUs, and so I think we're going to see a lot more hyper local as the market continues to contract a little bit.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Your trusted neighborhood brewery and a flagship. Your beer. This is my beer. This is what I go to. It's
Mhm.
like those movies where people go in and they just say, "Give me a beer." That's it.
Yeah.
I'm like, can we ought to try that. We should go down to Brick Store Pub
Just
and
give me a
just say,
beer.
give me a beer and see what we get out of it.
Let's walk in.
That'd be
They'll say,
cool.
Brian, the usual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's what. And when the server says something, I'm like, you know what? Just give me a beer. Just give me a beer. See it.
We'll look at
You
each other.
probably
You want
stress them out. They're like, God, I don't want to do this.
it's
These
like, yeah,
idiots.
you're like, you want a bourbon, Tim, or do you want a beer? Like
Yeah.
a beer. Like, I'll take a beer. We'll have 2
Yeah.
beers.
Let me get a shot. Yeah, 2 beers,
A
right.
beer, beer and a shot.
Please. Yeah.
I
You know what? Give me a beer and some food.
a beer and some yes, exactly
Yeah.
right. Just what I mean. Just bring it over. I think that I know lagers have been hot, but I think that it's taken a lot of people to catch up to, I think, where Atlanta's been for a while. I think people are not done exploring all the myriad facets of lager, and we're going to continue to seeing that
Okay.
for most of this year. I think, and I also think that West Coast IPAs will continue to become the new trend in IPA. And I'm not angry at it. I don't know if they're going to be nearly as abrasively bitter as they used to be. I think they're going to be softened for our modern times, but they will be more West Coasty and less hazy. I still think we're going to have hazies everywhere, and people are going to still want that. We may see lactose everything may be on the decline too. I don't know if we're going to see a lot of that either.
I don't know that we've seen it in a while, to be honest with you. It's calmed down, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Unless I'm just not paying
Probably.
attention, but I feel like I am. Just before the haze craze, like the haze craze came right on the heels of the IBU wars. So
Yes.
we had beers that this is 200,000 IBUs. I think Mikkeller did 1,000 IBU beer, theoretical IBUs, which is the old I forget what the exact threshold is, but apparently the palate can only perceive bitter IBUs up to X. So even if a beer theoretically by the brewing process had 1,000 IBUs, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be that
I think it's
intense.
somewhere between 80 and 100 IBUs. Like,
Okay.
I don't think I don't even know we can get up to 100 by that point in time. It's just a steamroller of stuff. I think clear beers, like beautiful, aesthetically pleasing clear beers, when we like the type we used to have. You knew you're getting a great beer when you poured it out, and it was almost iridescent, but it was clear. It was like it could be like a red or like
Are you arousing yourself right now? Talking about
a little bit, yes.
Okay, fair enough.
A little 7/8, but
yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if we see that again. Like we've seen haze for so long, like beautiful clarity in beer, like really pristine, clear, like crisp beer. I could see this being a thing of all shades. Like if you see a really, really well done red ale or red IPA, that just there's a certain thing about it, is like it's just amazing to look at, but you don't see them very often. And that's striking. I think, I don't know if people Instagram these things anymore, but it's very Instagrammable.
Instagrammable. So we went to Schoolhouse Brewing recently for beer and pinball, and they had, I think I mentioned it last week, maybe the week before, I'm not sure, but they had a brown ale on called Festivus.
Yes.
I'm very much on record for saying that a brown ale is a boring style in and of itself. Like I like a nut brown ale, vanilla goes really well with it. We've done, we had a homebrew brown ale that was a solid beer.
Yeah.
By itself. But I tried theirs for some reason. It was saying, you know what, I haven't had a brown ale in a while. And it was really nice. If you want a little more flavor than a Pilsner or what have you, then a brown ale gets there without getting, heavy, stouty, like an Imperial Stout and that. So it really nailed it. And I wouldn't be mad with just super, super high quality classic beers,
Yeah.
And that's do those, and give me some fun pastry stouts and maybe some kind of wild or sour ale there, and I'll be happy.
There you go. Yeah.
It'll be good to go. Absolutely. Well, y'all, I do believe that our time is about out here. We appreciate you coming and hanging out with us. Again, just a reminder, if you do enjoy what we do here, we would absolutely love it if you would tell a friend to give us a listen. Tell a friend to check us out. Share a link, share a quote, share a story. Tell folks what's in the show and why they should listen. If you really enjoy us, we'd love it for you to support us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beerguys. We'll get you some cool perks. We'll get you in our Discord chat where we do invite all of our Patreon supporters to the after party. Jump on camera with us here and enjoy a beer or two. But with all that said, we do hope that you have a fantastic week. Stay warm and don't forget to drink local. Cheers. We did it. Looks
We have done the show.
We made it. Let's see. I think we had a few comments here in the comment section. Let's see.
Dusty Bryan was talking about having winter warmers from Terrapin and a cherry wheat from I think Sam Adams.
Sam Adams.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Meant to say something about
wheat.
that.
Yeah.
Didn't get to it.
Down here, Tyler said, I had a student tell me today that he spent $450 on a cologne recently. Is that possible?
Yes.
Tyler, it's funny you say that because I was just talking to Brian and Nate before we went on the air here, and I have here a sample vial of a cologne. This is 2 milliliters of cologne here. 2 milliliters of this. And this cost me $45, Tyler. This cost me $45. If a full bottle, this is from a perfumer called Henry Jacques, and a bottle of this particular fragrance is $1,080. So to answer your question, can you spend $450 on a bottle of cologne? Yeah, I tell you what though, that is on the expensive side. Even like Louis Vuitton, like $330 for a bottle of a Louis Vuitton fragrance, and
Ombre Nomad gets up to 500, right?
Well, for the 200 mils.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Tyler, to answer your question, man, you could very, very much drop $450 on cologne. Bodicea the Victorious, Brian.
Yes.
They have $400, $500, $600, $800 bottles.
Those all sound like Victorious prices to me.
Yes. Yeah. But anyhow, so yep. Sure enough, you definitely could, Tyler. Definitely could. Well, y'all, thanks for hanging out with us. We appreciate it very much. We are going to sign off here. If you are a Patreon supporter, we are going to put the link in the Discord chat for you to come if you want to hang out and enjoy a beer with us. We'll be here for a while, y'all. Have a good one. See you soon.